Thank you so much. And I'll be speaking on management of traumatic cataract. Ocular trauma is one of the very important causes of preventable blindness, and this could not only cause damage to the eye, but also psychological, economic, and professional crippling of the patient. In case of children, we have seen a lot of accidental trauma, especially with the bow and arrow injuries after seeing a lot of serials. And this was a 9-year-old patient who came to us with a penetrating injury. He had a corneal tear as well as a cataract where the anterior capsule was ruptured. Now, in such cases, what we prefer to do and what ideally should be done is to first initially close the corneal tear by taking sutures and handle the traumatic cataract a little later at a second sitting. So here we are doing just that. We are first doing the corneal tear suturing and then managing the inflammation and the intraocular pressure. And then after a few days, this was done after a week, we went ahead and then tackled the cataract surgery. Now, this cataract is a very fluffy kind of cataract with the anterior capsule being ruptured. So just by irrigation and aspiration, we were able to remove all the cortical material. And as you can see, already the corneal tear is right in the middle of the cornea. So this was under severe guarded visual prognosis. This is a single piece hydrophobic acrylic lens being implanted into the eye, and the parents are explained regarding the chances of inflammation, infection, and irregular astigmatism and poor quality of vision of the patient post-operatively. Now, this is another patient who was an 8-year-old boy who came to us with blunt injury. As you can see, there is a very large iridodialysis inferiorly, almost from 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock, and he also had traumatic cataract with the vision dropping up to 636. So we did an inferior peritomy and marked a 1.5 millimeter area and a scleral groove inferiorly along the edge of the iridodialysis, and then put iris retractors to retract the iridodialysis part. And this capsulorhexis was done, again irrigation aspiration of the cortical material. There was a very mild phacodonesis, hence we went ahead and used a CTR to be on the safer side, and a 3-piece intraocular lens was implanted in the bag. The iris retractors were then removed, and we constricted the pupil with pilocarpine, and then went ahead to reconstruct repair the iridodialysis. This was done using a 90 Prolene and railroading through a 26 gauge needle, which was put in through the scleral groove. So there were 2 sutures like this, and adjusted. The sutures were then, the knot was tied, and the main incision and the conjunctiva were then closed. The patient improved to almost 6'9", with a -1 diopter cylinder with a very well-centered lens. This was another patient who had a corneal tear injury, which was sutured 5 months ago and had come to us now with traumatic cataract. As you can see, there's a lot of corneal irregularity, lot of high astigmatism and higher order aberrations. This was the IL master report of the patient with an astigmatism of almost 7 diopters. This was the corneal scar and the posterior capsular cataract, as you can see here. Capsulotomy is done, irrigation aspiration of the cataract as usual. In pediatric cataracts, there's a very, very high chance of posterior capsular opacification and decentration of the lens or optic capture. And hence, we need to be very careful here. We are using a single piece hydrophobic acrylic. This is the Hoya Vivinex lens, which has probably the least rate of PCO, no financial interest. Patient did well post-operatively. In traumatic cataracts, it's almost reported to have 11% of patients having cataract enclosed globe injuries with a mechanism of coup contour coup. There could be phacodonesis, capsular tears, and there is predisposition to increased progression. Now, this was an adult 75-year-old blunt trauma 5 years ago with a subluxation. So here, as you can see, we are doing the capsulorhexis, and you can see how the lens is actually moving underneath the needle. So there's a very high chance of greater tilt and increased subluxation on table. We're using capsular hooks to give vertical support and supporting the bag, going ahead with the phacoemulsification. This has to be done extremely gently to prevent more fluctuations and preventing greater zonular dialysis. Many times this could occur, and this could further complicate the problems. Once the phacoemulsification is done, you go in for the irrigation aspiration. The bag is still not so wobbly, and here we are now putting the CTR after the irrigation aspiration in cases where the subluxation is very severe or the dialysis is more than 4 to 5 clock hours, you would probably do a CTR in the earlier stage of the surgery itself. This was the picture post-op, patient improved to 6.9. Here we have used flax in the case of a subluxated cataract. Dr. Mahipal sir has already shown us how in many cases flax has proved to be very, very beneficial to the patient. Here the advantage is you can actually center it on the scan capsule, and it gives us a perfect capsulotomy and a very strong CCC so as to give good support. Here again capsular hooks are used, and the CTR, now here we are using it before the irrigation and aspiration, as we thought that the bag was a little more unstable. When we are inserting a CTR, we have to be very careful, support it with another instrument and see to it that the entire ring is properly introduced into the capsular bag. Sometimes it could slip into the ciliary sulcus and it could really cause more complications. Once the intraocular lens is implanted, then the capsular hooks will be removed, and that would be the end of the case. This was the post-op day 1. This was a very interesting patient, a 26-year-old male who had surgery of cataract done because of trauma 17 years ago, and the vision was just hand movement. As you can see here, there is total optic capture, and there is no pupil at all with a PBI seen superiorly. So here we went in underneath the lens and made a small incision, and then went in behind and did a vitrectomy. And with the vitrectomy cutter, we actually carved out a pupil for him. And there was this, the lens was as it is. And then at the end of the surgery, the patient had a good pupillary opening, and then the vision improved to almost 624, which actually helped him for good binocular vision. And this is a very old video, a 70-year-old patient who had history of trauma 20 years ago, very black cataract with phacodonesis and very poor vision. In fact, nobody had touched him for almost the 10-15 years since he had diminished vision. And doing a phacoemulsification in such a case would be really heroic. So we went ahead and did an ICCE with cryo, and just removed the entire lens or mass, and then put in retrofixated iris claw lens. So this was how the lens looked, and then the vision fortunately improved. So to conclude, in cases of traumatic cataracts, good history needs to be taken, a proper evaluation in the preoperative period regarding the extent of the cataract, the zonules, the amount of whether there is any anterior or posterior capsular rupture, a good counseling of the patient, surgical management, and good post-operative monitoring, especially with regards to inflammation and intraocular pressure monitoring and management. So basically need to take a lot of care to get good visual outcomes. Thank you so much.
Dr. Anaga, to make a promise that very nicely presented various scenarios in traumatic cataract. One thing that you highlighted was a good history and a good examination preoperatively. I think a preoperative examination as also the assessment of the posterior segment is something which is very, very important. Because that is where you can, despite doing a good or a heroic surgery, you could end up with the patients not recovering vision. So I make it a mandatory thing to do an OCT if it is not coming through from an OCT perspective. A posterior segment evaluation and an electrophysiological parameter testing could be there, because more often than not, if the trauma has been severe enough to kind of subluxate a lens, etc., there could be there could have been a macular edema, etc. That could be there, may not have led to a detachment or anything, but posterior segment problems are there, and these are patients who at times do not tell you, and they can be litigious. So that is something, a guarded visual outcome is best explained to the patient with a posterior segment evaluation to the best ability that you can. Otherwise, very nice presentation. You have highlighted not to be heroic. I also won't touch the last patient that you do to try and do a phaco procedure or even a femto procedure. In a femto procedure, the moment the tilt is so much that it is, say, vertical or it is dangling down, you can never get any advantage of a capsulotomy or a nucleotomy. So it is best to remove that. You showed retrofixation. We can go ahead and do any of the scleral fixation techniques that are there with equally good results. So nice presentation and nice points you brought up.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Dr. Haldipurkar, sir, I would like to know from you, in case of, like sir was saying in the last case, would you use an SFIOL or a glued IOL? What would be your lens of choice in such patients?
In fact, I would do the same that you did. One of the main reasons why I would do that is that to do your ICC, you have opened it you made a large opening there. So if I had to put scleral fixated, maybe, it's sometimes kind of unstable. And considering the amount of, visual prognosis that the patient has, I think I would be better off doing retrofixation. But my second choice, in a seeing eye or someone who's going to get good visual prognosis, it would be a scleral fixation. Because, there are a lot of newer ways of fixing a lens. But to the listeners, I would like to say that if you are good with a particular technique, stick with that, because even if you are doing scleral fixated, there's so much you can do to make it better and get better results. For me, iris clip and the scleral fixated, they work good because I've done many of them and the results are consistent. So I would be a little reluctant to go on to a newer technique like glued IOL, although it's not new and I have done it in the past, but I'm more comfortable.
So what has been the experience of the panelists in using the Yamane technique and the newer CTM Flex IOL?
So I personally, go ahead, Kumar or whatever. See, we have adapted to the glued IOL. Glue, I would say, is something that just makes the whole complex into one. But I think the Yamane technique is faster and it's pretty good. Sutured scleral fixation is something I would say is a little less practice now because it gives you a trampoline effect because the suture and now we are finding degradation of those sutures and now Gotex etc. is being used, which is reasonably thick. So I would do anything where you are fixating the haptic onto the sclera either with a glue or like a Yamane technique. That is what it is, or the bulb that you are creating at the end, and these work pretty well because the haptics don't degrade to the extent that you can have a suture being degraded, and the results are really good all over, and these techniques are being adopted by almost a lot of the surgeons. Results are excellent.
I want to make 3 points. One is when you put a capsular hook, like what Anaga showed, the way you make a side port for iris hook is different from what you will make for capsular hooks. So capsular hooks, when you make a side port, this is a take-home message for everybody, that it has to be shorter in length and very close to the limbus, then only your capsular hook will stay. Like how we make for iris hooks or like a normal side port to put up a chopper, if we make the same kind of side port, then the capsular hook is not going to go through that. Another point is whenever we put an endocapsular ring and the capsular hook is in place, we have to make sure that we loosen the capsular hook a bit before we put the endocapsular ring. And the last point I made is that all of you can look at this design from Nishant Madhivanan. He has got a new lens for posterior fixation like a glued IOL, but the haptics come out in a form of a T. So when you come out of the sclera, this T just opens up and it just locks on. So this I thought was a fantastic design. Yeah. You can ask Nishant, all of you know him, and it makes the procedure 1,000 times much easier. I have not used it, but it looks so very easy because it's just a T. You take it out from the hole in the sclera, like how we take out with a glued IOL, and just leave it there. So you don't need to tuck, you don't need to do anything at all. And yeah, I've told him to design in different sizes depending on the UBM that we get, and that will really make the procedure much easier and faster.
Yeah, that was a great innovation. Actually, it was presented yesterday also in the Thinking Under the Apple Tree. So, Dr. Nagvekar, sir, any comments?
Yeah, no comments, but I just wanted to ask Kumar, is it available with a certain company and are various powers available?
Yes, so you can ask Nishant. If you have his number, I'll message it to you in case you don't have it. But otherwise, yes, it's now commercially available. Sizes are not available. So I told him to redesign according to the size of the white to white, because it shouldn't happen that we fall short. So that he said is still not available. But if our size is standard, then it's available.
So I think size matters also for glued IOL because Amar has talked about it and the placement of it, and he marks that. So actually, he has made specifically in the high myopic eyes, you need it to be much bigger. So if you are using it in a shorter eye, that's not much of a problem because you can trim the haptic, but you can't really make the haptic larger. So therefore, that larger size would be required.
So I think what Amar does, he goes little anterior, and
Yeah,
his scleroscopy is little anterior, does a small PI, and takes the haptic out of that.
yeah, yeah, but he has two sizes also the for a myopic eye, and he does that because the out from where you are taking it out, it can be narrowed. That is there, and if it's a smaller eye, you can snip it off.
One question I had is when we are in a glued IOL, when you're or in a Yamane technique, when you're actually pulling both the haptics out of this above the sclera, the actual plane of the IOL lifts up. So
Yeah.
that would change the effective lens position. And what implication would that have on the post-operative refractive position of the eye?
So whenever you are doing such an IOL, you have to actually look at as if you are placing the lens in the sulcus. So you have to give a lower power from that particular point of view because the effectivity would be more. And the second issue in these particular cases is that for the lens to remain in the same position without a tilt, he has these markers which are exactly 180 degrees away. So you can mark it and so that you can take it out from exactly the same place. But yes, you have to work on the IOL power cases that instead of if you had prepared for even if you have a PCR on the table, etc., you had prepared for a lens to be put in the bag, you are actually placing it a little higher so that you have to take care. And normally, obviously, we don't have any lenses. If there is a problem of a toricity, you have to just leave it because we don't have three-piece toric intraocular lenses which are there. Otherwise, they will be very stable. But then you have to mark the axis. So as of now, we only do with the spherical lenses that are available.
Yes.